Hello, welcome to Lil's Vintage World. In this video, I am going to be reviewing 3 of the British Library Women Writers series titles. Ooh, that was a mouthful. So I was very kindly sent these books from the British Library for review. Let us discuss them, shall we? I'm going to talk about them in order in which I read them. Starting off, I have Stories for Winter. Look how beautiful this cover is, first of all. So this is a collection of short stories. I've really got the hang of short stories now. I don't rush them. And I just take my time with them and I read them alongside other things, and I'll pick a short story up and I might pick like 2 or 3 up in one go, and then I might put it down for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month might go by before I pick up another one. But I just wait for me to be in the mood for a short story and then I pick it up again, and that way I'm finding I'm enjoying them so much more. I actually really enjoyed this. I read it in like very early part of the year when it was absolutely freezing, and it really helped set the mood for me. There's some wonderful authors in here, some that I had read before because I had read the Elizabeth Taylor book, The Thames Spread Out by Elizabeth Taylor. I love Elizabeth Taylor. But there are so many in here that I hadn't read before, but also lots of authors in here that I hadn't heard of before. And also there was authors in here that I'd kind of gone, oh, I've read something by this author, and then I'd kind of thought, I don't think I'll read anything else by them, but then I've read a short story and then I've gone, actually, I'd like to give them another go. So that was the case with Elizabeth Bowen. Anne Lees by Elizabeth Bowen. Elizabeth Bowen, I read, oh, I can't remember what I read by Elizabeth Bowen now, but I read something and I was like, I'm not clever enough for this. I just don't get it, it's just going way over my head. But I actually really liked Anne Lees, so maybe I'll give that a go. And then I also, A Cup of Tea by Catherine Mansfield, I think was my favourite in this collection. And Catherine Mansfield is, of course, a very well-known author. And I have a collection of her short stories on this shelf, to be precise. And I've had it on my shelf for years, never got around to reading it. But since reading this, I want to now get to that Catherine Mansfield collection because I actually really enjoyed it and want to read more. I think this would be a lovely present for any kind of literary friend, or just for yourself to add to your collection, because let's be honest, this book is beautiful. Next we have Introduction to Sally by Elizabeth Von Arnim. Can you go wrong with Elizabeth Von Arnim? I don't think so. So this novel was first published in 1926 and is about this girl that then grows up to be this woman, and her name is something like Salvatia, I don't know. So the parents were thinking of like Salvation, but they were like, no, can't call her Salvation, so they kind of like changed it, but they don't call her that anyway. They call her Sally, hence Introduction to Sally. And Sally is achingly, stunningly beautiful, like shockingly beautiful. People have to stop and just look at her because she is stunning. And her mother was the same, and her father owns a shop and he's kind of gets sick of people coming into the shop, and they do like occasionally buy things, but it's an excuse to come in to look at Sally. And he's like, oh, I'm fed up with this. He ends up moving shop, but the same thing just happens in different locations because she is just so like, wow, eye-catching. And he's like, right, marriage time. And she ends up getting married to a man that is above her in terms of class, and she is very much working class. Her mannerisms, her accent, her grammar, just the way in general in which she lives her life and she goes about her life is completely different to that of her husband and what her husband now expects of her now that she's married to him. So he essentially sends her off to like his family home, where she is taught lessons in like elocution and mannerisms and how to conduct yourself around certain people and certain types of class and that type of thing. This book kind of reminded me a little bit of like Eliza Doolittle, you know, the Audrey Hepburn film. I love Audrey Hepburn. And I have to say, I do also really like Eliza Doolittle. And when I was reading this, I kept picturing Audrey Hepburn as Sally. I think it probably helps that Audrey Hepburn is also stunningly beautiful. So what a lovely person to envisage in my head. Yeah, and I did enjoy it. I was reading this at a time where I kept going into reading slumps, and so I would really like to give this another go, and I think I would get more out of it next time, but I did certainly enjoy it, and hopefully that plot has intrigued you. I mean, also, can we just take a moment for the covers? I know I just said the last one, the Stories from Winter, is beautiful, but I just love the colours of this, with the purple and the florals, and just, ugh. Yes, please. I should also say this is the second Elizabeth von Arnim book that the British Library has published in the Moon Writers series. Un momento, por favor. They also republished Father. I recommend Father all the flipping time, and everyone that I've recommended it to have really enjoyed it. So now there is a new one that I can go and be friends with. I'll probably put them on my shelf together. Look how beautiful they look. So yeah, go and read this one. This one's also fantastic. And then last but certainly not least, we have Forest Silver by E.M. Ward. This is from 1941. Oh, sorry. I know it's got a shiny, shiny cover, this one, so apologies if I kind of glare at you. So this is about a man who was in the RAF. He was a wing commander. His name's Richard, and he is discharged from the RAF. He received the Victoria Cross as well, which is such a high, huge Medal of Honour. And he was medically discharged from the RAF, and he goes to the Lake District to now lead a very kind of sleepy, twee English life, or as much as you can do when there is a world war on, in order for himself to mentally and physically recuperate and to pick up the pieces of his life again, so to speak. And while he is there, he introduces us to the environment, as well as this whole like cast of people that surround this area. So the area that we're in is the Lake District, and it is so beautifully described. I often don't really like descriptions, like overly descriptive text, but there's something about this that was beautiful. I think it's probably because I am actually going to the Lake District this year for the first time, and so I was reading it, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to see all these places. I'm very much presuming that this is actually based off the Lake District, not just completely made up by E.M. Ward. I'm guessing E.M. Ward knows the Lake District and is writing about the Lake District. And I was getting very excited when I was reading it, going, oh, and I was taking it all in, trying to like visualise myself there. So much so that the Lake District is a prominent character in this novel. But this novel is fascinating because, you know, I read a lot of books, or certainly started to anyway, on this period, particularly novels that are written during this period. They're often set in London. It's often the London Blitz, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. I really, really enjoy them. That's probably a wrong word to use. Fascinated by them, I think, is probably because it's learning history. You know, this is real history that is happening at the time. I mean, this is 1941, so we're right in the depths of war. But I don't read too many that are set outside of London. And it's fascinating when you take that step away from London, because in this, there's lots of things that I suppose you would expect to still be happening during the time of war. And there's still like policies and procedures that, you know, even they have to go through, even though they're in the middle of nowhere. But it is such a slower pace of life. It is more remote, and people are quite eccentric here. My eye was, I don't know if she was my favourite. I think her name's Chorus, Corys. I think that's how you pronounce it. 17, and describes themselves as like, doesn't quite feel female, but also doesn't quite feel male. And she is very not traditionally feminine in a lot of ways, but she's a wonderful, wonderful character, and she really, like, I was so intrigued by her. And yeah, as well as like a lot of other people. But I found this such an interesting wartime novel that just gave me a different perspective, because it's in a different location that I'm just not used to. So yeah, it opened my eyes, so to speak. And I don't think you can ever read enough novels from wartime set in wartime. I don't think they'll ever be done, because we're just reading different perspective. You're reading different people's living history. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Recommend it. Again, enjoys the wrong word. Found it fascinating. Would recommend it. So there we have it. 3 more of the British Library Women Writers series novels for you to go and check out. Please let me know in the comments if you've read any of those. If so, did you enjoy them? Are any going to go and sit on your wish list now? I'd love to know. So thank you so much for watching this video. Take care, and I shall see you soon for the next one. Bye for now.